Hey guys, Max here. Let me ask you a question. What if the future of artificial intelligence wasn't being built inside the glass towers of Silicon Valley, but in small, scrappy offices run by startups you've never even heard of? You might think trillion-dollar tech giants with endless resources would own this race. But here's the unexpected truth. Right now, it's the little guys that are outpacing them. And the reason why will completely change how you think about innovation. Here's where it gets interesting. The very size and scale that make big tech look unbeatable are the same things slowing them down. Imagine a massive ship trying to turn. It's powerful but painfully slow. Now compare that to a speedboat that can pivot instantly. Startups are those speedboats. They can take risks, adapt overnight, and jump into new ideas before the giants have even scheduled their first meeting. But how exactly are they pulling it off? One answer lies in something researchers call the bureaucracy tax. A Harvard Business Review study found that as companies grow, decision-making slows dramatically. Layers of approval, legal reviews, brand risks, every move is weighed down. Startups don't have that problem. They live on speed, which in the AI arms race is the single most valuable currency. But here's the twist you probably haven't heard. Speed alone isn't enough. There's something else even more powerful giving startups their edge. That edge comes from focus. While tech giants spread themselves across dozens of products, phones, ads, cloud storage, hardware, startups pick one narrow problem and attack it relentlessly. Think about companies like Stability AI building generative image models, or Anthropic focusing on safe language models. They don't try to do everything. They try to do one thing incredibly well. And because of that, they can move faster, attract specialists, and often out-innovate the so-called leaders. But what happens when giants finally notice and try to crush them? Stay with me because this next insight will surprise you. Even when the giants copy, they rarely win. Why? Because culture can't be cloned. MIT research into innovation cycles shows that small, tight teams outperform larger groups when tackling uncertain, fast-changing problems. Startups thrive on experimentation, pushing dozens of prototypes, failing quickly, and iterating until something works. In contrast, big companies fear failure because mistakes scale globally and make headlines. Ironically, this fear of embarrassment protects startups, giving them a safe lane to experiment in. But the story doesn't end there. Money, you'd think, is where big tech dominates. They can pour billions into AI research. But here's the counterintuitive truth. Throwing money at a problem often makes it worse. Too many resources create complacency. Startups operating with limited cash are forced to innovate smarter. They rely on open source models, community collaboration, and lean engineering. The result? Tools that are cheaper, more accessible, and often more popular with users. Just look at how open source models like Llama sparked global communities while proprietary tools stayed locked behind paywalls. But does that mean startups always win? Not quite. And this is where things get really fascinating. Because while startups excel at innovation, giants excel at distribution. A startup can invent something brilliant, but without scale, it struggles to reach the masses. That's why many of the most successful plays you've never heard of involve partnerships or acquisitions. Big tech buys speed, and startups cash in on distribution. But is selling out really winning? Or is there a deeper strategy here that flips the script? According to investor Mark Andreessen, the most disruptive companies are the ones that refuse to be acquired, forcing giants to compete on their terms. Think of OpenAI in its early days, partnering with Microsoft but not surrendering control. That hybrid strategy allowed it to scale quickly while still innovating independently. Could this be the blueprint for how small AI startups not only survive but dominate in the long run? I'll unpack that in just a moment. But before we get there, let's open another angle. What about talent? You might assume the smartest engineers want to work at Google or Apple, yet surveys show more and more top talent prefers startups. Why? Freedom. In startups, a single engineer might shape the entire product. In big tech, they're just one cog in a massive machine. That sense of ownership fuels creativity, and creativity is exactly what breakthroughs demand. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. Startups aren't just winning the war for talent. They're also rewriting the rules of what talent even means in the AI age. Because here's the unexpected truth. AI talent isn't just about engineers anymore. Startups are proving that some of the most valuable contributors are prompt engineers, data curators, and domain specialists. People who may not code at all, but know how to guide AI systems in creative, profitable directions. McKinsey calls this the rise of AI translators. Professionals who bridge the gap between technical teams and real-world applications. This redefinition of talent makes startups more inclusive, flexible, and able to harness expertise that big tech often overlooks. But what happens when these roles scale globally? That's where ecosystems come into play. Startups don't try to do everything alone. They build on top of open-source projects, leverage cloud infrastructure, and crowdsource improvements from global communities. It's like they're standing on the shoulders of thousands, while big tech insists on building towers from scratch. The result is faster innovation, lower costs, and a constant flow of fresh ideas. But here's the twist. You probably haven't heard this before. This collaborative DNA also shields startups from collapse because no single point of failure can bring them down. Still, collaboration can be messy. So how do startups keep from drowning in the chaos? The answer lies in vision. The most successful startups have founders with a crystal-clear mission, often obsessively focused on solving one problem for humanity. Think of DeepMind's ambition to solve intelligence itself, or Hugging Face's mission to democratize machine learning. These narratives don't just attract talent, they attract investors, users, and entire communities who buy into the mission. In contrast, big tech often struggles to articulate why they're doing something beyond shareholder value. And here's why that matters. People don't just adopt tools, they adopt stories. Which story would you rather be part of? But here's another curveball. Regulation. Many assume regulations will crush startups and favor giants who can afford compliance. And yes, there's truth there. But regulations can also backfire on the big players. When lawmakers scrutinize Google or Meta, they often overlook the smaller innovators flying under the radar. This gives startups time to grow, test, and even disrupt markets before regulators catch on. In fact, history shows that too much regulation aimed at giants often creates the very loopholes startups exploit. Could AI follow the same pattern? It's not just possible, it's already happening. Let's talk money again. Venture capital is pouring into AI startups at record speed, but the smartest investors aren't chasing hype. They're betting on companies solving real, painful problems. Healthcare diagnostics, supply chain optimization, personalized education. These are trillion-dollar problems. And startups with laser focus are more likely to crack them than sprawling tech giants chasing everything at once. But here's a thought experiment. What if the giants stopped competing and started copying the startup mindset? Could they finally catch up? The evidence suggests, not really. A study from MIT Sloan found that even when big companies try to act like startups, their culture and structure make it nearly impossible to sustain. Innovation sandboxes, incubators, special labs, they start fast but collapse under politics and quarterly earnings pressure. Startups, by contrast, live or die by their innovation. That's why they're relentless. And relentless usually wins. But winning doesn't always mean going public or getting acquired. Sometimes it means reshaping entire industries quietly, without most people even noticing. Until one day, it's obvious the old way is gone. So let's bring this all together. Startups are crushing giants, not because they have more money, more people, or more power. They're winning because they're faster, sharper, and freer. They embrace risk, leverage open ecosystems, and focus on vision rather than bureaucracy. They're rewriting the rules of competition in real time, and here's the part that really matters. This isn't just a story about business, it's a story about the future of innovation itself. Because the question isn't just, can startups beat the giants? The question is, What happens to all of us if they do? Imagine a world where the most important AI breakthroughs don't come from trillion-dollar corporations, but from 20-person teams working out of shared workspaces. Imagine the next big leap in education, medicine, or creativity being born not in Silicon Valley boardrooms, but in communities all over the world. That's the real disruption, and it's already unfolding. So here's my challenge to you. Don't just watch the headlines about what Google or Microsoft is doing. Pay attention to the small names you've never heard of yet. Because history shows that the real revolutions rarely come from the giants. They come from the outsiders, the underdogs, the startups with nothing to lose. And if AI is truly the defining technology of our era, then it's these small, fearless players who might just end up shaping the future we all live in.